During this recording, we will share the process put into place to support a student's transition from early childhood special education services to kindergarten services. As you watch this presentation, I encourage you to write down any questions you might have as the information is shared. At the end of this presentation, we will let you know how to get those questions answered. We will be following this agenda as we share about the transition process. We will discuss the team approach used to support each student's transition to kindergarten age services. We will be sharing about beyond preschool, those services that are waiting for them. We will also provide an overview of the reevaluation process and what to expect at the IEP meeting. And finally, we will look at transportation for school-age children. Let's look first at the team approach. It is important to remember that the transition to kindergarten is a collaborative process involving a child's early childhood special education teacher, the kindergarten special education and general education staff and teachers, related service specialists when necessary, and of course you as the parent. Your input is critical and valued. While you may be interacting with many different school staff during this process, the goal is to develop an IEP that reflects your child's strengths and needs as they move on to kindergarten. As we look beyond preschool, you might be asking, what happens as children move into the school-age program? And how are kindergarten special education services provided? We have a continuum of services available at all schools, and the school team is obligated to provide these services in the least restrictive environment at the child's neighborhood school, if at all possible. The least restrictive environment may look different for each child depending on their needs. So what does this continuum of services look like? Well, for some students, it may look like special education services provided in a general education kindergarten classroom. For other students, it may look like special education services provided in a special education setting only. And for other students, it might be a combination of both of the above. Some of the services provided within the general education kindergarten classroom, with a mixture of also some services provided in a pull-out special education setting. The level of participation for your child in the general education setting is an IEP decision based on your child's needs, and we'll look at this further when we get to the IEP meeting. Now let's look at the reevaluation process. A reevaluation meeting may be the first step in your child's transition. The purpose of this meeting is to review all the assessment information and determine whether updated evaluations are needed in order to have accurate and comprehensive information regarding your child to support us in making decisions about what school-age services are necessary as they go to kindergarten. When we engage in a conversation around reevaluation, we have to look at this decision tree to determine the need for a reevaluation. First, we have to determine if a 3-year reevaluation is due for your child. This is also called their triennial. If the 3-year reevaluation is due, then we will engage in the reevaluation process, and I'll share more about that on the next slide. If the 3-year reevaluation is not due for your child, then the IEP team will meet to determine if additional assessments should be considered, and if so, a reevaluation process may be initiated. For some students, they may not require a reevaluation in order to determine the specialized instruction required for that student in kindergarten age services. If a reevaluation or additional assessments are determined to be needed, the reevaluation process begins. Reevaluation may be recommended to determine the most appropriate eligibility category and/or to consider additional eligibility categories. If your child is not scheduled to go through the reevaluation process, but does have an eligibility of a developmental delay, then we want to let you know that the information we're about to share will be important to you as your child gets closer to age 7. Because at age 7, the eligibility of developmental delay is no longer available to children, and we will be looking at other eligibility labels as needed. As we look at this reevaluation process here on this chart, you'll notice that it begins with a reevaluation meeting. At this meeting, we will discuss what information is needed to determine the student's current level of performance and their continued eligibility for special education services. The evaluations that are determined to be needed will be conducted, and a parent interpretive meeting will be held when these assessment results are available. After the parent interpretive conference, an eligibility meeting will be held to determine if the student remains eligible for special education. If they do remain eligible, then an IEP meeting will be held, and goals will be developed to support them as they finish out their preschool special education time and support them as they move into kindergarten. If a child is not eligible after this reevaluation process, they will be dismissed from special education services. The types of evaluations that may be considered at a reevaluation meeting include psychological assessments, educational assessments, sociocultural assessments, and any related services evaluations as appropriate to your child. The psychological evaluations may include behavioral observations. These observations will occur in natural surroundings such as the classroom, at home, in other preschool or caregiving environments, or during the formal assessment, and they may include a structured observation. In addition, a norm-referenced assessment may also be conducted as part of a psychological evaluation. This would include assessments which have been standardized on a representative group of students. They must be administered according to standardized instructions, and they will inform us on your child's developmental milestones and the effects of the interventions that have been tried. Interviews may also be conducted during a psychological evaluation. This may include child, teacher, and parent interviews, and with parent permission may include consultation with medical providers if appropriate. Rating scales can also be used to secure information from parents and caregivers and from teachers representing areas of the child's development and their acquisition of skills. And finally, informal assessments may also be conducted during a psychological evaluation recommendation. This includes record reviews, such as reviews of medical records or other criterion-referenced measures. During the reevaluation process, educational evaluations may be requested. These evaluations include assessment tools to examine child development or educational achievement. The children are compared to same-age peers, and the evaluations may be developmentally specific, meaning in some instances, only specific developmental areas may need to be assessed for your child based on their needs and their strengths. If sociocultural evaluations are to be considered, here are some things that they include. A structured interview conducted by a social worker with the parent or caregiver, and the goal is to examine the whole child, including a developmental summary, medical history, academic and behavioral needs, including parent concerns and input, which can include the child's strength and any protective factors. After the evaluations are completed and the results have been shared with the parent, if a child remains eligible for special education services, an IEP will be developed. An IEP is an individualized education plan. This IEP is considered a transition IEP meeting. These meetings are held at your child's base school or neighborhood school, meaning the school that they would attend based on your home address. At this meeting, the core IEP team members include you as the parents, as well as your sending early childhood special education teacher. She's there to support you, as well as the receiving school-age staff, the general education teacher, kindergarten teacher, and any special education staff necessary for your student, and any additional staff as needed to meet your student's needs. At that same IEP meeting, transportation needs will be considered, and if special transportation is required, a transportation representative may be one of the additional staff present at the IEP meeting. If the IEP team determines that the needs of your child cannot be met at their neighborhood school, the IEP team will reconvene with appropriate staff present at the next meeting to support discussion of where services may be more appropriate for your child. The last part we'll be discussing today is transportation, the big yellow school bus. Most rising kindergarten students will be transported on the big yellow school bus with other students from their neighborhood. You might be wondering, who are the school bus drivers? Our school bus drivers are trained career professionals. They are licensed with a commercial driver's license. They complete Fairfax County Public Schools bus driver training program, and they are recertified every 5 years. They are also CPR and first aid trained. You may also be wondering, how does transportation assist your students transition from preschool to kindergarten? The bus driver is the first FCPS employee to greet your child going to school each day. Our goal is to provide a safe transport for each student. Kindergarten students attending school at their neighborhood school will most likely ride a big bus with from a neighborhood bus stop for kindergarten. Some students may walk to school if they live within the 1 safe mile from school. Remember, we'll be discussing transportation needs at the IEP meeting, and if your child needs another arrangement, it will be discussed then. You might wonder, how does a bus driver know who is a kindergartner? The bus driver will be putting yellow duct tape on the shoulder straps of all kindergarten backpacks. This will help the driver to quickly spot a kindergarten student. This tape is placed on your child's backpack strap. It's very important. Please do not remove this tape. The drivers need to know which students are kindergarten students, as that affects where the child will sit on the school bus, as well as is a reminder to the bus driver that a guardian must be present for a child to be released at the bus stop. This brings us to the kindergarten procedures for the big bus. It's important for you to know that kindergarten students must be met at the bus stop by an adult. There are no exceptions to this. If there is not an adult who asks for the kindergarten student by name at the bus door, the driver will not be able to release that student, and the student will be returned to schools. So please remember to make sure there is a parent designee, guardian, or a responsible middle school or older sibling present when your child returns home on the bus so that they may be returned to you. Additional kindergarten procedures for the bus are included here. It's important to know that kindergarten students are the first on and off of the school bus when it arrives at school. There are school bus student patrols, and they are there to help the kindergarten students. Often, the student bus patrols escort the kindergarten students to their kindergarten classrooms when they arrive at school. Good bus behavior is expected of all of our students, including our kindergarten students, and we will work with you to help them have a great time on the bus. If your child rides the big bus to school, your child will receive their bus pickup and drop-off times by the school before the school year starts. Unlike in the preschool program, buses cannot cross school boundaries at the school age level. This is important as you consider your childcare options. Now is a good time to start looking for childcare options that are in your neighborhood school zone. And remember, the transportation services are an individualized decision made at the IEP meeting. Thank you for your time today. We hope that you enjoy the ride on the Fairfax County Public Schools transportation information, and we thank you for your time today as we've shared information specific to the transition from early childhood special education services to kindergarten services. The preschool program, in conjunction with the staff of the Office of Procedural Support, will be holding virtual parent meetings soon to answer any questions you may have about this presentation and the transition to kindergarten process. We hope you will take advantage of these parent meetings to have your questions answered, and we thank you for your attention to this recording.